The old woman's trembling voice cut through the air like a fragile thread about to snap. "My arms are tired," she whispered, clutching the tray she had been forced to carry for far too long. Her frail figure swayed as she stood in the lavish living room, pleading with her son's fiancée, who sat cross-legged on the sofa, scrolling through her phone without a care. At that very moment, the door creaked open, and an unexpected figure stepped inside, the millionaire whose name the family whispered about but never truly knew. The elderly woman was Anna, a widow whose life had been one of sacrifice and quiet endurance. She had raised her son Daniel alone after losing her husband in a tragic accident decades earlier. Her hands, worn from years of sewing and cooking, had never once trembled when providing for him. But now, those same hands struggled to hold even a tray of water glasses. Her spirit was still strong, but her body had grown weary, and the indifference of her son's fiancée pierced her heart deeper than any illness ever could. Daniel's fiancée, Clara, was beautiful, wealthy, and ambitious. She wore elegance like a crown but carried arrogance in her words. To her, Anna was nothing more than a servant in the house she planned to rule. "If your arms are tired, then put it down somewhere," Clara said dismissively, not even glancing at the woman who had given her everything she would one day inherit. The coldness in her tone stung, but Anna forced a smile, refusing to let her pain show. It was at that instant that Richard Hale, the millionaire philanthropist and distant family friend, entered the room. He had come unannounced, wanting to surprise Daniel with an offer that could change their lives. But instead, what he found froze him in his tracks. The sight of Anna, bent under the weight of a simple tray while Clara lounged unconcerned, struck a chord deep within his heart. Richard had known poverty and loneliness in his youth, and he recognized the silent suffering written across Anna's face. Anna's knees buckled slightly, and Richard rushed forward, his strong hands catching the tray before it slipped. "You shouldn't be carrying this," he said firmly, his eyes soft with empathy. Clara looked up, startled, and quickly adjusted her expression, though irritation flickered in her gaze. "Oh, Mr. Hale," she said with forced sweetness, "you didn't tell us you were coming." But Richard ignored her, focusing only on Anna, gently guiding her to sit down on the nearest chair. The room grew tense as silence fell. Anna lowered her gaze, ashamed that a stranger had witnessed her weakness. Richard knelt beside her, his voice low but steady. "Your arms are tired because they've carried too much for too long," he said. "You've held up more than just trays, you've held up a family, a future, and a son's dreams. But no one should ever make you feel small in your own home." His words carried weight, and for the first time in years, Anna felt seen, truly seen. Clara shifted uncomfortably, sensing that the balance of power in the room had changed. She tried to laugh it off, saying, "She insists on doing things herself. I never asked her to." But Richard's sharp glance silenced her. He was a man accustomed to cutting through excuses, and he knew cruelty when he saw it. Clara's mask slipped for just a second, revealing the disdain she held, and Richard made a quiet decision in his heart. Anna's son Daniel entered moments later, his face lighting up at the sight of Richard. "Mr. Hale, what an honor," he exclaimed, shaking his hand. But Richard did not return the smile. Instead, he looked directly at Daniel, his voice heavy with disappointment. "The honor is mine, but I must ask, do you know what your mother endures under your roof?" Daniel froze, confusion flickering across his face as his eyes darted between his mother, Clara, and Richard. Anna, embarrassed, tried to interject, "Please, don't say anything. I don't want to cause trouble." But Richard gently squeezed her hand. "The truth is not trouble, it is freedom," he said. Clara rolled her eyes, muttering under her breath, but Daniel caught it, and his stomach tightened. For the first time, he noticed the exhaustion in his mother's face, the subtle tremor in her hands, and the way Clara avoided responsibility. Guilt gnawed at him as realization set in. Richard then told them a story, his own story. He spoke of his mother, who had worked herself to the bone, carrying trays in a diner until her hands blistered. He recalled how she'd whispered the same words Anna had just spoken, "My arms are tired." She had passed away before she could see him succeed, and he had vowed never to let another mother feel unappreciated. His voice trembled as he finished, "Do not make the mistake I made, ignoring the silent cries of the one who gave you everything." Tears welled in Anna's eyes as she listened, her heart aching both for her own loneliness and for the mother Richard had lost. Daniel looked shattered, realizing he had been blinded by love for Clara while neglecting the woman who had sacrificed her entire life for him. "Mom, I'm so sorry," he whispered, kneeling before her. But Anna simply stroked his hair, her love undiminished despite the neglect she had suffered. Clara, however, scoffed. "This is ridiculous. You're all being dramatic. She's old, of course she gets tired. Why is everyone making such a fuss over this?" The words, dripping with disdain, sealed her fate. Richard stood tall, his eyes blazing. "Because respect is not optional. It is the foundation of love and humanity. And if you cannot see that, you do not belong in this family." His tone left no room for argument, and Daniel, though torn, knew the truth had been spoken. In that moment, Daniel made a choice. He turned to Clara and said, "I can't marry someone who doesn't honor my mother. If you can't respect her, you'll never truly love me." Clara's face twisted in shock, her pride wounded beyond repair. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her, leaving a silence that felt both heavy and liberating. Anna exhaled, her body trembling, not from weakness but from relief. Richard placed a reassuring hand on Anna's shoulder. "You are not alone," he said warmly. "From this day forward, you will be treated with the dignity you deserve." His eyes flickered to Daniel, who nodded with determination. The young man held his mother's hand tightly, silently promising to rebuild the bond he had neglected. It was a moment of reckoning, one that reshaped their family forever. Over the next weeks, things began to change. Daniel took time to cook with his mother, to sit beside her and listen to her stories, to carry the burdens she once carried alone. Richard often visited, bringing laughter and light, treating Anna not as a burden but as the queen of her home. Slowly, the shadows of neglect gave way to warmth, and Anna's smile returned, brighter than ever before. The community noticed the shift, too. Neighbors who once pitied Anna now admired her resilience, inspired by the way she carried herself with renewed strength. Richard, ever the philanthropist, began a new project in her honor, a foundation dedicated to supporting elderly parents who had been forgotten by their families. He named it, "My Arms Are Tired," a tribute to the quiet sacrifices that too often went unseen. Anna watched with pride as her story became a source of hope for others. Though her body remained fragile, her spirit soared, knowing her struggles had birthed something beautiful. She no longer felt invisible. Every hug from her son, every kind word from Richard, and every smile from those she inspired reminded her that her life had mattered, deeply and profoundly. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of gold, Anna sat in her garden with Richard and Daniel by her side. The air was filled with laughter, the kind that heals old wounds. She leaned back in her chair, her eyes glistening. "My arms are tired," she whispered again, but this time with a smile. "Not from carrying burdens, but from holding blessings." And in that moment, the weight of years turned into the lightness of love. The Millionaire's rush had not only saved her from a moment of exhaustion, it had sparked a revolution of the heart. A family was restored, a legacy was born, and an elderly woman, once overlooked, was honored as she always should have been. And in the quiet of that garden, her story became a reminder for all: never wait until it's too late to cherish the ones who carried you. Anna's story was far from over. The evening in the garden had felt like a new beginning, yet life had more lessons to unfold. Though Daniel had broken off his engagement with Clara, whispers in the community began to stir. Some people pitied Clara, painting her as the victim of a broken relationship, while others quietly applauded Daniel for standing up for his mother. But what mattered most was the peace Anna finally felt in her own home, a peace that had been missing for years. Richard, the millionaire who had stepped in that fateful evening, continued to visit often. His bond with Anna deepened, not out of pity, but out of shared respect. He found in her the warmth he had long missed since losing his own mother, and she found in him the son she had always prayed Daniel would one day grow to be. Their friendship was pure, and it gave Anna a glow that surprised even herself. Daniel watched, humbled, learning how love and respect could change everything. But the shadow of Clara had not disappeared. She returned one afternoon, uninvited, her pride still smarting from the humiliation she felt. Her voice was sharper than before as she confronted Daniel, accusing him of choosing his mother over his future. "You'll regret this," she hissed, her eyes narrowing. "Without me, you'll never climb to the heights you dream of." Daniel stood firm, his mother's frail but steady presence at his side. If reaching those heights means dishonoring my mother, he replied, then I'd rather stay on the ground. Clara stormed out once more, but her bitter words lingered like a storm cloud. Anna, however, no longer trembled at Clara's cruelty. Instead, she smiled gently at her son. People who cannot love, Daniel, cannot truly build anything lasting. Let her go. She is not your path. Richard nodded in agreement, adding, true success is measured not in wealth alone, but in the respect we show those who gave us life. Daniel absorbed their wisdom, slowly reshaping his vision of the future. In the weeks that followed, Anna became the quiet star of her neighborhood. The foundation Richard had built in her honor, "My arms are tired," began to gain attention. Families who had abandoned their elders came forward, ashamed but ready to reconcile. Children who had forgotten the sacrifices of their parents returned home with flowers, apologies, and embraces. Anna's story had touched more hearts than she ever imagined, and she often sat by the window, tears in her eyes, reading letters of gratitude from strangers. Yet, even as the world began to recognize her, Anna's health began to falter. The years of carrying burdens had left her body weak, though her spirit remained unshaken. One evening, Daniel found her struggling to rise from her chair. Alarmed, he rushed to help, but she smiled and whispered, "Don't worry, my son. My arms may be tired, but my heart has never been stronger." The words, though gentle, reminded Daniel that time was precious. He vowed to make every moment with her count. Richard, too, grew more protective. He arranged for caregivers, built ramps in her home, and ensured she had everything she needed. But Anna, ever humble, often insisted, "I don't want luxury. I just want love." And love she had, in abundance. Daniel spent evenings cooking her favorite meals, sitting at her side as they shared laughter and stories. Sometimes, when the night grew quiet, Anna would lean her head against his shoulder, just as she did when he was a boy, and Daniel would silently thank the heavens for giving him a second chance to honor her. But fate has a way of testing bonds. One night, as Anna sat on the porch under the moonlight, Clara returned once again, this time not with anger, but with desperation. Her own family had turned cold after her failed engagement, and she sought to reclaim what she had lost. "Please," she begged Daniel, her voice cracking. "I was wrong. I need you." Anna listened silently, her heart torn. She did not wish to see anyone suffer, not even Clara. But she also knew love built on convenience was not love at all. Daniel's reply was firm but kind. "Clara, I wish you well, but I cannot build a life with someone who never learned to respect the woman who gave me mine." Clara's tears fell, but there was no victory in Daniel's voice, only truth. Anna, though weary, rose to her feet and placed a gentle hand on Clara's shoulder. "My dear," she said softly, "your arms are not tired yet, but one day they will be. Learn to carry love, not pride, before it's too late." Clara said nothing, but her eyes betrayed a crack in her heart, a glimpse of the woman she might one day become. The days turned into months, and Anna's home became a place of healing. Friends, neighbors, even strangers drawn by her story would visit, each leaving with a lesson in humility and gratitude. Daniel found love again, not in a woman of beauty and wealth, but in a kind-hearted teacher who adored Anna from the start. Richard remained ever present, his friendship becoming a quiet anchor in their lives. Together, they built a new world where respect, love, and kindness reigned above all else. Anna's health continued to decline, but she was no longer afraid. Surrounded by love, she often whispered the same words that had once been filled with sorrow, "My arms are tired." Only now, those words carried peace, not pain. And when the day finally came that she closed her eyes for the last time, she did so with a smile, knowing her son had finally understood the lesson of her life. Her legacy lived on through Daniel, through Richard's foundation, and through every soul her story had touched. In her absence, people still repeated her words, not as a sign of weakness, but as a reminder of strength, that the arms which carry us through life deserve to be honored, cherished, and never forgotten. And so, Anna's tired arms became a symbol of unending love, inspiring generations to come.